in math classes, English classes. Why can I not think of any other classes? Science classes. I could possibly use these textbooks to help me dissect and learn about how to dissect books. Did that make sense? I don't think so. Let me try that again. The only one that I own is They Say, I Say, or I Say, They Say. One of those. Somebody says something and the other person says something back. Well, hello there. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley, and today we're going to be talking about the books that are most commonly assigned in English college literature classes. Whew, that was terrible. We're going to talk about the books that are most commonly assigned in English classes in the college setting. I happened to stumble across this wonderful little website called opensyllabus.com, and this website it collects all of the syllabuses across the United States, from Ivy League schools, from private colleges, public colleges, the whole gamut. It collects the syllabuses, and then it collects the information from those syllabuses. So it collects all the information on the books that are most commonly assigned in math classes, English classes, why can I not think of any other classes? Science classes, philosophy classes, all the whole gambit. And I will link that website down below if you're curious. Now, this is interesting to me for several reasons. It is November as I'm filming this, and I did not go back to school. I have not gone back to school for many years now because I'm done with college for the moment. And I miss school. I miss the learning. I miss the syllabus. I miss knowing I'm going to be reading all these cool things in the year. I just miss that because that's the type of person I am. Now, right now in my life, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go back to school. It will make sense later, but right now it doesn't. But I realized a couple weeks ago that the thing I love about school the most is the aspect of self-discovery and the way that reading challenges how you view the world and how you think about the world. And that is not something that is unique to a school setting. I can do that on my own. I was about to say to myself on my own, but that sounds weird. But I can encourage the process of self-discovery and self-growth on my own without needing to be in a college classroom setting. My goodness, the sentences. Make them match. So I got curious. What books are most commonly assigned in English classes, and have I read them? Number one. And number two, what does that say about us that these are the most common types of books that we are recommending to college students in our classes? And then number three, what do I do about that knowledge, if anything? Book number one is A Writer's Reference by Diana Hackle. This appeared 8,609 times, and I don't know why I was surprised that a book on how to write was the most commonly recommended book in English classes. I thought for some reason it would be an actual, piece of classical literature, but instead it's a book on how to write. But I could possibly use these textbooks to help me dissect and learn about how to dissect books. Did that make sense? I don't think so. Let me try that again. I could use the tips and tricks that this book recommends on how to break apart a book and how to view it and analyze it to help me analyze other books, because I'm guessing what an English textbook is supposed to make you do or help you do is to understand how to read literature. And most of the time you have a teacher who's lecturing on that, but if you could just read the material, you could also get that information on your own. That's the theory anyway. I do have not old, but I still have some textbooks for my English classes, so I'm going to skip this one and use those two. Number two, this one is called They Say, I Say, The Moves That Matter in Academic Writing. This appeared 7,245 times. Now, this is a textbook that I'm familiar with. Most of my teachers referenced this. I have never read it. I do, however, own a copy of this one because somebody was getting rid of their textbooks for free, and I said, hey, that looks interesting, because that's the kind of person I am. When you hand out free books, I take them. So I do own a copy of this, and I can read this. This is all about formulating arguments and how to craft quality arguments in your writing. So number three, and the first classical book to actually appear on our list, is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This appeared 6,770 times. This story follows a college dropout who is intent on the process of creating life, and then when he's successful with that process, his intentions to destroy that life. I actually just finished a reading vlog and a deep dive of Frankenstein. If you're interested in either one of those videos, I fully 100% agree with this book being read in college classes. I loved Frankenstein, and I was surprised that this book, out of everything else, is in the top of the list of books that we recommended. I thought Shakespeare would be at the top, but maybe that's really pretentious of me. Number 4 is The Canterbury Tells by Geoffrey Chaucer. I bet in Old English you would say Geoffrey, and now we just say Geoffrey, and we just ignore the fact that there's an O there. Anyway, by Geoffrey Chaucer. This appeared 6,656 times, which is almost 666, 4 sixes. And a lot of people would agree that this book is the devil. This is written in Old English, very similar, not Old English, this is written in like modern English, what we would call modern English by linguistical terms. But it's set up very much like Shakespeare. It's very hard to sink your teeth into and wrap your mind around. I tried to read this, but I tried to read it by only giving it half my attention. And if you miss poetry, if you miss things in poetry, the whole thing just falls to pieces. So I need to attempt to read this one again. This book, I feel like, is referenced so many times in other pieces of classical literature that you miss a lot by not knowing what's going on in this story. This story follows a group of pilgrims as they head to the Canterbury Cathedral to pay on a pilgrimage, essentially, and they decide to have a storytelling contest between all of the pilgrims there. So it's the tales they tell on the road to the Canterbury Cathedral, which in and of itself is not a very interesting plot to me, but I did a little bit of research, and apparently this story is important because it spent a lot of time talking about major themes for the social era that it was written in, the place of women in society, things like that. So it was much more of a social commentary than anything else, and not just a collection of fairy tales. Number 5 is Paradise Lost by John Milton. This appeared about 5,455 times. Again, this book is something that is referenced very highly in lots of pieces of literature. Again, if you haven't read this or you don't understand it, then you're probably missing out. Well, you may not be missing out on as much if you have a traditional Christian background, because a lot of the stories from Paradise Lost are pulled from that. But if you don't have a background in Christianity, then understanding what is going on in Paradise Lost is probably very confusing. This is the Christian creation story with Adam and Eve and the appearance of the devil. I read this when I was 12. I was highly annoyed by it. Don't remember very much at all, and I'm pretty much counting it as me having not read it, because I didn't. I was just reading it to say that I had read it, which is a terrible reason to read a book. Book number 6 is Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. This book appeared on Syllabuses 4,923 times. I knew nothing about this novel, but it was published in 1899, and this follows the story of a sailor named Charles who takes an assignment as a ferryboat captain in Africa. According to Wikipedia, this provides a lot of social commentary on the colonial period of who is actually at fault here, the savages or the educated Europeans who are performing terrible acts of cruelty. I think this is a very interesting sounding novel, and I don't think I own this one. But I've heard, again, this is one I've heard so many things about, having run in some English circles before. So I'm going to keep my eyes out for this at thrift stores and see if I can pick up a copy. Number 7 is actually not a novel, but a short story, and this is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. This short story appeared on Syllabuses 4,921 times, and I've read this story multiple times, and I will read it more multiple times because I love this story. This story follows a woman who has given birth and is struggling with postpartum psychosis, depression. Something changed when she had a baby, and her husband and her family react to her change in hormones and change in emotions by locking her in a room with yellow wallpaper, and as you can guess, that goes poorly. This you don't actually need a physical copy of anything for. This is available for free on the internet if you just type in The Yellow Wallpaper. Now, number 8 is a pocket style manual by Daniel Kacker. This appeared 4,751 times. This is another reference guide on how to write. This is probably really handy if you're spending a lot of time in the academic world. However, I don't know why you would need to buy this book when most of the information is free on the internet, if you know what sources to go to, because this talks a lot about APA style, MLA format, MLM. I've been watching too many commentary videos on YouTube. Not MLM, MLA, Chicago style, referencing citation manners. So if you're spending a lot of time writing, this might be very handy to have on hand, but I'm not. So I'm not. Number 9 is Proofrock and Other Observations by T.S. Eliot. This was on Syllabuses about 4,354 times, according to the website as it currently stands. And I don't think I've ever read anything by T.S. Eliot. I've heard that name tossed around a lot. I actually own a book of essays by T.S. Eliot, but I've never read anything by him. So I'm interested to see why this essay appears on the top as opposed to other essayists like Henry David Thoreau, for example. Now, number 10 is the MFA Handbook for writers of research papers. It was referenced on Syllabuses about 3,915 times. I'm not going to be spending a whole lot of time writing MLA papers, so we can just move right along. The next book, also a reference, is the Bedford Handbook by Diana Hacker. This appeared, again, 3,915 times. This is also a writer's reference, and this makes me curious on how people decide what a good English textbook is. I'm sure there are benchmarks for how you decide whether something is going to be a good book or not, a good reference manual, a good way to teach about how to analyze English, but I have no idea what they are. If you happen to know that, leave that down below. That just seems like a very specialized field of knowledge to be digging into. All right, the next two are both short stories. So number 12 is The Story of an Hour by Kate Chopin. Chopin is not, I'm pretty sure it's Chopin. This appeared 3,631 times. I have read this one once. I read this for college, surprisingly enough. I didn't understand it the first time around, but I have thought about this story a lot since I read it, because as I grew up and started to find myself in the same experiences as this female character, I was like, oh, I understand why you reacted that way. This story follows very briefly what happens to a woman who is told her husband has just died. Number 13 is A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner. This appeared about 3,631 times, and I also read this one in college. This story follows Emily, whose lover leaves, and she is destroyed by that. This is kind of set about the same time as Little House on the Prairie. There's also a little bit of ghostly hauntingness to this story. This story is a little haunting once you get to the ending and you realize what's been going on the entire time. It's creepy. It's a good creepy, even though A Rose for Emily sounds like a princess story. This is not a princess story. This is a creep story. Number 14, this is our last manual to appear on this, The Elements of Style by William Strunk, I think. This one appeared 3,616 times. I have heavily, I have heard this referenced a lot. Say it that way. I'm sure I've looked at copies of this book too. I don't own one, but this book has a very big reputation. Whether it deserves it or not, I don't know. Not here to say. And very finally, lastly, number 15 is Hamlet by Shakespeare. This appeared on 3,264 syllabuses, this website has record of, and we have this classic tragedy. I read this in college. I despised it in college. I don't know if I would feel the same way about it the next time around. And I didn't despise it because I hated Shakespeare. I despised it because of the play itself and what it made me think about. If you don't know anything about the story of Hamlet, it is about a man whose father shows up to him in ghost form and says that his uncle has killed him and he needs to get vengeance. And then everyone dies because it's a tragedy. Sorry, spoilers. So what does all this tell us? I do find it quite interesting that about 5 of the books on this list are books on how to interpret English and how to analyze English and how to write about English, which I do find interesting that part of one of the main tenets of English classes is teaching you how to analyze and how to write. I also learned that if you don't count the English books, I've read half of the books recommended on this list, so killing it. It's all by accident because I just went to college and had a fairly standard English college class. So the 4 books that I haven't read on this list would be Paradise Lost, Geoffrey Chaucer, Canterbury Tells, there we go, essays by T.S. Eliot, and then Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. So those 4 are the only 4 that I haven't read on this list because I'm not counting the English textbooks. So I definitely can add that to my massive long list of TBRs. The most interesting is the textbooks, and the only one that I own is They Say, I Say, or I Say, They Say. One of those, somebody says something and the other person says something back. Since I own this textbook, I think I'm going to try and read it a little bit and see if that can teach me how to analyze literature, because what I would love to be able to do is to go back to school for English and just study literature, because that's my ideal world, is spending time in college classes studying literature for the rest of eternity. So if I could not pay thousands of dollars to do that in a classroom setting and can do that on my own, and share those observations with people on the internet, that would be my preference, because that's free for the most part. Anyway, we're going to see if we can figure out how to analyze works of English literature from the comfort of your own home. Or at least the comfort of my home. So that's the hope moving forward. And if nothing else, then it's good to know that I've read some of the books on this list and that I can somewhat talk about them intelligently. But again, are we falling into the trap of, am I important because I'm reading all of these books? I hope not, and I have a video referencing that if you want to know more about that. Anyway, this is very rambly, but that's all I have for you. I will talk with you all in the comments down below and in another video. Bye!